This episode of 3PNR is featured on the Onyx Network. Happy Halloween.
He's rolling, so then he's going to do the intro.
Yep. Welcome to 3PNR. I'm your host, Adam R. Happy Halloween. This evening I have a variety of people here. I have Chris Deperno, I have Dave Rodriguez, I have Spectrewaves, I have Thomas Wertman. How's everyone doing tonight?
We're good.
Doing good.
Great.
Good.
Great.
Good. So, in the spirit of Halloween, we're going to be discussing the more creepier, experiences we've come across. For me, that's going to be all shopping related. But we're going to start off with David. David, how you doing, sir?
Doing well, thanks. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, sir. Go ahead. Start off with one of your more chilling experiences.
Chilling experiences. Well, I've done a few possession cases. Those were, I guess, that's pretty chilling. The ghost stuff, really, to me, ghosts aren't that. It's not. I've always been interested in it. Never really scared me or anything. But the possession cases get a little crazy.
Right.
There was one. Okay, let's see if I can make it quick because the stories aren't quick, but I'll do it fast. There was a possession case.
Don't rush through it. You know what I mean? I got Don and Laynee here at the helm. We got a lot to talk about.
I'll rush through it, and you can ask me questions if you need to.
Yeah, good.
So there was a possession case in 2005 in downtown Omaha. There was somebody. This is back in the day when I would give people my phone number. Those days you'd put a card out at like a new age shop and they'd call. And I got a call about 2 a.m. Answered that call, and they seemed to. I thought really off the bat, I thought they seemed a little crazy or whatnot, because the stuff they were telling me just didn't seem, like it was real. But I told them I'd call them the next morning and we'd talk. And it ended up a case where the woman would get possessed at night. Let me start from, they moved into this apartment in downtown Omaha. And within a couple of weeks, like the woman, they were a married couple. The woman couldn't work. The man, they couldn't sleep. She was just getting very angry. He was getting a little angry, but it affected her more. And so then it ended up after a few months that he had to tie her up to the bed at night because she would either try to kill him or try to slash her own arms. And it got nasty. And he was afraid to go to a doctor or anything because he thought maybe they would just put her in a mental asylum. So, I understood that. It makes sense. There was Father Malachi Martin one day said he was one of the top exorcists, but he passed a few years back. But he always used to say that perhaps 80% of people that are in a mental asylum could be going through some kind of possession, which, that's him talking and not me, but that whole thing is interesting. And so they called me out of desperation because basically they couldn't work, they couldn't sleep, and tying his wife up to a bed was a little crazy for him. And I went there. At the time I had a team. This is Omaha, Nebraska. My team had 2 nurses in it and a couple big guys. Basically the team was perfect for what we had. And we ended up going there on the first occasion. The woman wanted, she told us all the stories. We didn't see her really possessed at the time, but she wanted one of us to sit. She kind of felt an affinity towards the medium in the group, which was Annie. And she asked her to come and sit in her bed where most of the stuff would happen at nighttime. So they just kind of sat there, not sleeping, I think, but just laying there. And she was talking about what was going on. We had infrared cameras in there. And we were sitting in the kitchen, which is adjacent to that room. Right next to it. I said, listen, anything happens, we'll just jump in there if anything goes crazy. But we really didn't think anything was going to go crazy. But it did. So Annie ends up going into convulsions. And luckily she was one of the nurses, but Dottie was another nurse. And she couldn't really, we had Carl, who was rest in peace, he died, but he was a guy that was almost 7 foot tall. A huge, huge man. And he tried to grab her from one end. We rushed into the room. He tried to grab her by her head. My buddy Dan tried to grab the other side. I tried to grab her feet. And it was like grabbing, it was like trying to lift, a cement block. We couldn't even get her out of the thing. And she was shaking. And we ended up getting her basically Dottie's like, get her out of there, get her out of and I'm like, just get her out of the apartment, because probably that's the best thing. Just get her out of that location. We ended up getting her out of the room. Then it was a little bit easier. We pulled her out of the apartment and took her downstairs, but she literally, she was in, looked like she was in, like, had an epileptic fit or something. So that's where it started. But I mean, throughout that case, it lasted a few months, but we would get scratches on our arms. There would be, there was in the house itself, which when the woman, which we actually taped and saw her going under her possession, she would like get her whole face would change and kind of her eyes would get a little bit black. And then she would start talking like this, that type of, typical, like a movie type of thing. And at one point she put me up against a wall, said, "You're going to go to hell, David," but like in a demon voice, like, "You're going to go to hell." Like, that was kind of probably one of the scariest things I've ever had happen to me. But I had to, you have to be strong during these things and not let it really affect you. But we would, when she would go under this possession, we would put K2 meters, which are EMF meters, electromagnetic, they would tell what's going on with energy in the rooms. We'd put them all around the apartment. And as she would go under this possession, it would start in her bedroom. You'd hear beep, beep, beep. These were, I don't know if they were K2s at the time. They were like cell sensors is what they were called, because this was back in the early 2000s. But so they'd go beep, 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 beep. And then one in the kitchen go beep, 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 beep. And you start hearing the whole house beep, beep, beeping. And it would get, and then all of a sudden she'd be like, start laughing, like, it was, the stuff was, it would get crazy in the kitchen, especially. But it would happen in other walls. But in the walls, there would be like this substance that would come out of the little corners of the walls and pieces of the wall. And that stuff, we got tested. That was part like vegetable oil and part, I forget what else, some other kind of like synthetic thing. But like, it was crazy. So this was the first time that me and Carl, we were talking. He ended up being the director when I moved to Miami, and now his daughter's the director because he ended up passing from cancer. But we ended up speaking together and just saying, we have to help these people, because this is, they need help. I mean, these people are going to end up, she's going to end up killing him, or something bad's going to happen. So we tried to go to different churches, try to get help. And we ended up getting help from one of the churches in Omaha. And basically I took them the video of what I found and the voices and all the crazy stuff that was going on. And they said that they would pray on it at least. So they called us back the next, it was about a day or two, maybe 2 days. They said that they had done a high mass or something, and they had prayed on it, and they deemed that, that they should go there and help. So they ended up helping over. Well, I'll tell you what the problem was. Basically, the apartment had been rented to them literally 2 weeks after a drug dealer got shot in the head there. Somebody came in, stole all his drugs, shot him in the head. That was, it was like a robbery. So that guy, I don't know how evil that guy was, but whatever happened in that apartment totally changed these poor people's lives for forever, really. So the church came in, and the church was able to help them for about 2 months. And then after that, it got worse. They came back, the church came back, and it lasted less this time, like 2 or 3 weeks, and it came back. And basically, what I had told them is, because since, my backstory is that I'd gone under possession, really the only thing that really helped me was to move from the location. That's like the number one thing. That's what they did. They moved out of state. They moved to a different place, and it got better. She's, she'd already opened that portal. So I'm sure things. I mean, I spoke to her a couple of years ago, and she said that they're still married. Everything's fine, but things will never be normal after that. But there's my story.
Yeah. The whole, having a tire, but that's all standard practice in my house. But when I spoke into these detectives that interview these serial killers. So people realize, when I hear these possessions and they change tone and voice and the way they behave, listen to the podcast from last night I did with a homicide detective who's interviewed these serial killers. They're one person when you're speaking to them. And then you'll hear in the episode where he discusses a victim that got away. his entire demeanor, the tone of his voice, everything about him altered. He went from person to predator in a split second. That's a human being, right? A sociopath in a sense. You can imagine what a darker entity would do, right? Because they're in game mode all the time.
I mean, the thing is too, because I underwent a possession when I was younger, between 12 and, my teenage years. And so I understand kind of like what they're going through in that sense, but you don't really remember what's happening because I thought I was in control and it was in me. But then sometimes I would act like a total crazy person, and I only get away with it because I was a teenager. But
yeah, and when you're talking about
trying to kill my brother at one point, and like that's crazy. You like it wants you to kill somebody, to kill yourself. It wants something. It wants to control whatever. It's not good. And I think that you just don't realize what's happening when it's happening to you.
Yeah, again,
whatsoever. Because I thought I was in control, but obviously I wasn't.
I reference the serial killers, especially now that I'm talking to more of the detectives involved in them, as they're interviewing these guys. Their personalities legitimately altered itself. The way he describes that reaction to the serial killer when they mentioned the victim that got away, his demeanor changed. That's frightening. That is super frightening the way he behaved. So, and then again, I've been speaking to a lot of experts lately. And when, the things that change in a room and when you're seeing moisture and the temperatures, that's currently being looked at by science. So I make room for it.
Well, I'll tell you what used to happen to me. And I don't think I've ever really said this anywhere, but I've told some people, but I've never really said it out in the public. But basically what I remember when I would try in the deepest parts of the time, I'd get back home from school. I was in middle school, and I get home and I just sit in front of the mirror, rocking back and forth, trying to there's always some kind of thing in the Ouija board, you're playing that, you go in circles and stuff. There's some kind of rhythmic thing that goes on that's just natural with all of this type of magic type of stuff, I guess what you could call it, because I don't really know what else to call it, but and it just happens natural. So I would just kind of rock back and forth, and then my eyes would literally underneath, where your bags would be under your eyes, would just turn black, and it would take probably about 7 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that.
You got to understand physics.
And then I was different. Then I was a different person, and maybe that's when I would change and probably not remember much of what was going on. But I don't know if that happens to everybody. This woman, her eyes would get black on the side a little bit, but maybe that kind of blackness in your eye or around that, maybe that's a sign. But I think definitely the voice changing. My voice didn't change as much as this woman's voice did. Sometimes you think it's fake because the people are, they're speaking like they're in some possession movie, on television.
Again,
so that can't be real.
I reference a serial killer. This is a biological person who, when he found out about a victim that got away, his demeanor change was frightening business. It gave cops the chills, right? This is a guy who literally altered his state. I'd spoken to you about Chris Deperno. I'd spoken about the whole thing in Colorado. I didn't say where, right? I didn't, because I really... No. That's an upcoming thing. I've literally off podcast heard lots about it. I'm not going to say because I know there's something coming there, and you're going to cover that eventually. But something's going on there, yeah.
In Colorado, the Skinwalker Ranch, there you're talking about.
Yeah, their version of it.
Right. Well, first I want to just to comment about the serial killers, because I did have a murderer that killed a child. And my expertise was in interview and interrogation. I go in and get confessions.
That's right. You were a homicide detective, yeah?
Yes.
That's right.
And I actually had a child killer. It very much showed a lot of remorse. And it's a game of chess. When you go in there and you start interviewing these murderers, especially the ones that are very good at it, I should say, it's a game of chess. They want to see what you have as far as evidence or what you know before they open their mouth. And you're kind of not giving all your cards out, but you want to show a little bit to make them think, hey, we got you cornered. So finally, when we call it getting them over the hump, when they say, okay, he's got me. This one child killer that I did have, I'll never forget it. He was crying on my shirt, Lean, I couldn't have done such a thing. It was horrible what happened to this child. And I would never do such a thing. But when I had him and he knew I had him, he stood straight up and he put a smile on his face and he leaned toward me. and that shows a lot of confidence and a lot of stuff that, going into me, he says, yeah, I did it.
Yeah,
I mean, can you imagine the chill right then and there?
I can. I tell people this often. If you want to know what the afterlife is for spirits and energy, there's some real evil amongst us. I mean,
yes, there is.
Can I ask a question? Did their physical, anything change with them when sometimes when you watch this?
His personality just changed. It was the tears went away immediately. He erected himself up straight. You could see that his shoulders hunched up, and he leaned into me with a lot of confidence, like, I don't care what you know, kind of deal. And just the words, yeah, I did it.
Chilling.
Yeah, man. The more I talk to the detectives on podcasts, off podcasts, and I hear these stories about, especially the sociopaths. Listen, if you have any question what evil goes into the next world when we pass from here, it's undoubtable. There's so much here. Our species is a scary one. So
I could tell you that a lot of times murders are done by passion, and people really are remorseful. But then there's that one section that people becomes you just look at it and say, holy Christ, what in God's name do I have sitting in front of me? I mean, for somebody to just absolutely, this is all a game to him. And even though he's caught, he's confident.
I don't want to blow the whole story, but from last night's podcast, listen to it, because the shit this serial killer put the detectives through, just to be a manipulative SOB. By the end of that story, he was telling me, I was blown away. I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. That he had so many masks that I don't even know he knows his true own origin.
So it is a game for them, really.
Indeed,
it is a game. Yeah. I had one where he actually came in and wanted to report his wife missing, and he had the nerve to walk in the police station and say, "Hey, my wife is missing," and he ended up taking her head off with a pipe saw. And I was able to get him to confess, but we had nothing on him. He was going to walk out the door, and we knew something was wrong, and we were able to convince him to not only confess but show us where he dumped the body and stuff. So, and once again, there was that evil sense there that he hated her so much. He was such in a rage with her, but he was able to control it in front of us until he realized that we had him. We had him. We're there. And then the true nature of what they are comes out, and it's very frightening. To me, that's one of the unbelievable, scariest stories, because this guy can come over the table and you have no idea how far he'll go to kill anybody else.
Yeah, and you're talking about a guy that could be your neighbor. I was talking to a detective last night, and there's a woman who worked alongside of Ted Bundy for years and had no idea who he was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One of the biggest serial killers.
That guy, his personality was on point. He was he was intelligent. You just wouldn't know. And even from courtroom, from who he was in behind closed doors, night and day. You know what I mean? So that is some of the creepier stuff. I say it every time. Thomas, what do you got going on, buddy?
What do I got going on? Well, when you talk about these creepy things, it sounds like a lot of us, have had experiences with different areas in paranormal, and some of that stuff is carried over to us in real life. And one of the things that I bring up is it's kind of like a little three-part thing I want to tell you is back in the 1960s, kind of what got me involved in UFO stuff a little bit was I had my own experiences. It was one of those things that back, probably right around the age of 11, 12, something like that, I started developing periods of sleep paralysis. And I completely realized, hey, that isn't necessarily related to alien abduction and so forth on there. But I started developing these paranoias that, hey, something was coming for me every night. Something was going to be there. And as I got older, I kind of looked at it from the point of view like, okay, it's kind of like the monsters in the closet type thing, and you kind of write it off that way. But it was about a year or so after these events started happening that one day I was out hunting with a buddy, and I've talked about this a little bit before. And when we talk about hunting, I use that term loosely because I lived in South Carolina at the time, and we would go out with shotguns. And we'd walk through the peach orchards, go deeper into the woods. And the main thing we shot was abandoned appliances and anything that didn't move. I mean, if it moved, it was just too much for us. We didn't want to kill live animals, so we just shot anything that was abandoned out there. Well, on one of these excursions we did, we're going out, we lived in a very rural area where a lot of the roads were actually dirt with a little oil on top of them to keep the dust down. We're walking out to the peach orchards, going into the woods, and he starts telling me to begin with a story about, hey, you know, there's a swamp willie back in here. And I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of like a campfire story, you know, and so forth. Well, everything went completely silent. No animal life, no nothing like that. He started getting more nervous. He started picking his pace up, and I looked up, and I saw this UFO directly above us. And it's one thing to see the light in the sky from about the size of Venus, but this was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and this object was low enough that it could have brushed the treetops. It was that low. And I'm watching this thing as we're going through the woods, and I never said a word to him to look up. He's scared about this swamp willie, everything quiet. And I'm looking up, seeing this UFO, and we just kept walking and walking and walking deeper into the woods, not trying to get out, but going deeper. And eventually we hit, I don't know how much later, this dirt road that we had to walk about 5 miles home. He starts telling me about this huge owl that was standing in front of us about 4 foot tall. He said, man, this thing had big eyes. There's a big owl standing in front of us. I said, man, I don't remember no owl, you know. I didn't tell him about the UFO that was above us this whole time. And it disappeared about the time we hit the road. Well, for years after, I kept thinking about that event. And one of the things that kind of jumped out is it was almost like there was something there with an encounter. And this would be something for a later time, but I did go through regressions that indicated that something had happened back then, that there was an encounter with basically a being similar to a gray. Well, I always wanted to, you know, if something kind of carried over, because in one of the regressions, there was like a mental contact between me and this entity, whatever it was. And it was almost like I tapped into its mind. I could see what was on its mind. I could sense it. I could sense not only it, but other beings of its own type. Well, I remember this whole thing through these regressions, and it tied back into the events back in the 1960s. Well, more recently, I started doing investigations, and I started running into people. And matter of fact, one was a psychic. And this is where it kind of creeps you out a little bit. I ran into somebody who was actually, I was interviewing a Wright-Patterson autopsy witness. And as I'm interviewing him, his wife is looking at me like I'm completely creepy, like something is wrong with me. And he goes, oh, don't worry about my wife. She's just a psychic. Well, at the end of it, like a 2-hour interview, she looked at me and she goes, they're not done with you yet. I said, who isn't done with me? She goes, you know who I'm talking about. You've had experiences with them in the past. They're not done. Well, I knew what she implied, and I'm like, wow, this is kind of creepy, you know? Well, I was doing an investigation, long distance. And this is where I kind of think that, you know, something may have carried over from that contact from years and years ago. I'm doing a interview with a witness in Puerto Rico, long distance by phone. And she's describing this event, which a woman is driving down the road. This light is following her. She pulls into her mother's house at night, and she goes, Mom, this light is following me through the sky. And her mom didn't believe her until she left, and the light followed her down the road. Well, she's telling me this thing over the phone. All of a sudden, I got this vision in my mind of somebody sitting in a room. The room was completely dark. They're looking ahead, and they see these windows going all the way across the other side of the room, and I can visualize 3 large windows on the other side of the room. The room is dark. I see this figure standing in front of the windows. The figure silhouetted. You can't make out the features on it, but you can tell this figure is kind of like short in stature just because of the size of the features themselves. The individual's still looking forward, but something didn't look right about this figure. This figure looked like it was not standing in the room where the witness was. It looked too low. It was short in stature, but it also looked very low, like it was below the witness's room height somehow. And I couldn't put that together. Well, she finishes telling me about this object chasing her down the road, and all of a sudden she leads into a story. She goes, let me tell you about something else. Me and my mother have had contact for years, also my grandmother. She goes, one night I was at home sitting in my living room, and she goes, it's night. And I said, okay, keep going. She goes, well, it's at night and I'm sitting in the living room looking at the windows. And she goes, I had no lights on, and you could just see the light coming in from the windows on the other side of the room. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Is this what I saw in my mind before she ever told me this? So she goes on. She goes, yeah, there's 3 windows on the other side of the room. And this entity, whatever it was standing in front of the windows, silhouetted in the light. So I said, no lights were on. She goes, no, the figure was standing in front of the windows. And I said, well, describe this figure more. She goes, well, it was short. I couldn't see any features. I said, okay, give me more details about everything. She goes, well, I'm sitting in this room, and our living room is kind of like 2 different levels. You come out of one level and you go down into another level, and that's where this being was at, this entity. I'm like, wait a minute. I saw an entity lower than the room height, and she's telling me her room is lower than the room height. How did I see this before she ever even opened her mouth describing anything like that? And, it kind of creeps you out when that happens. It's like, how is this really occurring? And I've had that happen several times during these investigations with certain witnesses, that somehow it's like you're tapping right into the witness himself. It's like I'm seeing what's on their mind, in their mind, before they ever mention a word. And that's one of the ones that really jumps out at me.
Yeah. I heard that's more common than what you know, Thomas. I hear that a lot. People of experience tend to have some sort of channel in their head that's been altered. Off podcasts, I hear that a lot. I have a lot of interviews off podcasts. I hear that plenty. And sometimes, like a woman stated, she was in public and she was amongst another one, and she just knew that person, and she approached her. She just knew she had an experience, and it turned out she did. So, of course, it's unexplainable because we can't explain everything. I mean, I know what Bluetooth is. I don't know how it works, but I know what it is. You know what I mean? So we don't know what kind of advancements that were put in play there to track you that may be indicating to you or others what's going on, right?
Right. And that's happened on, I don't know, maybe about a half a dozen of cases that really stand out. That, somebody that to me has had solid contact, a solid experience, that somehow it's like you tap in because there's something left over, maybe something from their contact and your contact that, like there's, like you say, there's kind of like a channel, kind of like, using your term Bluetooth, that somehow connects us together.
Yeah. Something got altered in the brain. We're not aware of it. Real quick, David, you're going to take off.
Yeah, I've got to get going because I've got an event in the morning. If I don't go now, I won't be able to eat dinner. But
thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, nice meeting you all, and happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, David.
Happy Halloween, David.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
We'll circle back to Thomas in a minute. Dawn and Laynee.
Hey.
Laynee is, so that you don't know, like I say this to everyone, pretty tough guy in real life, right? I will not walk into some of the places Laynee will just walk into. Just walk in. No thought, just walks in there.
And stay by herself.
Yeah.
That's really the key there, Adam.
Yeah.
Is that so we just concluded about a week and a half ago our second go round with the Forest Home Cemetery, because
I haven't watched it yet. I'm saving it. Save it for tomorrow.
It was so prolific the first time that we went there. There was so many things that were going on. Is that we had spirit box interaction the first time. We had Connect figure coming out of the ground, which doesn't happen very often. We had a lot of spirit box activity where it was intelligent responses back to us. So we were invited back, and we took them up on the offer. And we never, in the first time around, we never made it to the back of the cemetery. But for some reason, that mausoleum that they're trying to sell, which is $1.5 million, this is an enormous mausoleum. The interior part is open. The bottom part is where really the family would be. So it's kind of got a basement, if you will. And so as we approached back to the back part of the cemetery, we had to go past this mausoleum again. So the first time that we were there and we walked past the mausoleum, I was taking pictures on one side of the mausoleum. Laynee was taking pictures on the other side of the mausoleum.
And that's when I went ahead and I was taking photos. Later on, I was reviewing the photos, and I captured a figure. I captured a man. It looked like a man that was in his 40s, had a work tool bag with him on his shoulder, had a vest. You can see all his features. I was so shocked. So I start looking at the other photos right after I took that photo, because normally we take a concession of like 3 photos at a time to see what's changed. Maybe it was a glare or whatever, but Don was on the other side of the mausoleum. So it wasn't a reflection there. I can't explain how I got this figure on my phone. I just can't explain
one
it.
thing I will say is that Laynee's really proficient at taking pictures all the time when we're in any environment, and she spends an inordinate amount of time reviewing it to see if there's anything that's got an abnormality in it that doesn't appear in the other photos. Now, if it does appear in the other photos, we discount it, as something that was there. It could be environmental, could be something else, but she nailed this one. And we very rarely ever have pictures of shadow people. But this figure, and you can definitely tell Laynee is, for all your listeners, is very small. She's very petite and very tiny. Is that, and this is a big, hulking, burly guy. I'm not even that big. So, it was pretty amazing. So, to get back, we went back to the mausoleum. We were kind of called there as we were going down to the back part of the cemetery. And so Laynee had forgot her phone, and this is where the bravery comes in, Adam, is that, so what does Laynee do? She doesn't say, well, I'll go back. We'll go back, walk 5 minutes to the front of the cemetery, 5 or 6 minutes, and go get the phone, because she left it in the van. She says, would you be willing to go get the phone? And I said, sure. Okay, I'll go get the phone. And so I make my way back to the van to go get the phone. And in the interim, she does an entire investigation by herself. So one of the interesting things about this was, again, for some reason, Laynee keeps getting called back to this mausoleum. So she does the investigation. She actually has the 3D Connect camera out. She's putting out REM pods. The REM pods engage, and then just as the REM pods engage, the 3D figure pops up on top of the REM pod, which kind of corroborates the fact that there is an entity there. And then we have these static detectors that are called vortexes, and they only detect static electricity. You can't even really set them off by touching them unless you rub your hand against the top of it. That's the only way you can engage it, similar to how you would do a balloon on your hair. And so those went off as well. And the figure jumped from one side. Now they have these two giant lions that are on either side of the entryway. And so it's on one side of the lion, then it's on the other side of the lion. And so by the time I get back, right, this happens a lot, so Laynee is garnishing all this activity. I get back with her phone and Laynee says, look, we've got a Connect figure and it's been real active since you've been gone. And I go, oh, look, he's dancing. And then he's gone. And that was the last interaction that we had at that mausoleum. But we collected the equipment. We started to make our way back towards the back of the cemetery. And what happens?
That's when I got touched on my head. It wasn't like a bug touch. It was somebody that literally just tapped my head with their hand. And I go, Don, I just got touched on the head. He goes, no way. What do you think it was? And I said, I really think it's from the mausoleum. For some reason, something keeps calling me back to go to that mausoleum.
And I will say this is that, and I had the infrared camera going and I looked up because, of course, it's an older cemetery. There are huge trees in there. There wasn't a branch. We would have had to have been 15 feet tall to hit a branch. So there was no branch. There was nothing that could have, tapped her on the top of the head. And it was kind of cool that night. So there wasn't a lot of bugs. Which sometimes we get moths or whatever that are attracted to the IR light and they'll bang off the top of the camera but there wasn't a lot of bugs that night. So, so that's our most recent creepy story.
Yeah. I watch these videos and I find myself saying, what the hell is Laynee doing? She's just going to walk right out there. You guys have a great dynamic. I said it before. You really do. She has the experiences and you investigate and she just charges out there. Like I've got to tell you, there's some scenes I saw where it's not even fear. I'm just so cautious, right? She just walks there and she smiles. She gets excited. Like these other shows, these people have an experience. They're like, oh my God, you see that shit? Or she's excited about it. You know what I mean?
She's totally excited, right?
I totally love it. I really do.
Yeah.
And the more evidence we get, the happier she becomes.
Yeah, I see that about her. Me, because I'm a nut. Like I told you, I'll just run up on something. I see something, again, I'll document. I might not come back from it, but I'm definitely going to document it.
I even, the patch paper of Oak Forest picked up the story and put it in the paper. So I was really happy. They put the image that we got by the mausoleum. They call it the paperboy image because he's got like a paperboy hat on.
Right.
And yeah, that was really exciting. So a lot of the local people got to see the story, read about the story.
Yeah, see, like Chris Deperno, you should connect with these guys, right? Because Chris is former detective. He's in MUFON. That's a good network to build, because there's a lot of parallels.
Absolutely. I mean, think of the evidence that they're collecting right there. I mean, the stuff that they have done is just amazing. And I got to tell you, you're a braver person than I am.
Yeah, Chris,
I don't like ghosts.
Watch the videos with her. She just walks into scenarios that I typically wouldn't walk into without thoroughly making sure everything's okay. It's impressive.
Well, the living, I would say, is sometimes more scary. Of course. So.
Yeah. And Chris can attest to that, right? Sometimes the living are a lot more scary.
Much more.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, Chris. Tell us about some of the experiences you had in that realm, or the things that frightened you overall.
We were doing the Skinwalker Ranch up in Clinton, New York, and it was, I'll tell you, it connects with the serial stuff and everything we were talking about, but portals and evil spirits and the whole bit. So I get a call from a registered nurse. A nurse calls me and says, there's something really strange going on in our land up here. And this is during COVID. So we wanted to go up there and we had to be very cautious about certain things. But she says, strange things are happening. There's lights in the sky. Things get moved around in my house. There's a lot of thumping. All of a sudden, you hear these loud booms within the house and you hear people going up and down the stairs and everything. So I said, okay, let's take a look at this. So I sent a person I know out there, and he starts investigating. He says, Chris, there's something really weird going around there. So I asked the psychic, I says, do me a favor. Go out there and just tell me what you're feeling. He comes back and he goes, Chris, this place is really evil. People have been dying there. What do you mean dying there? He said, no, I'm telling you, there's something there, and there's something by a creek. So I talked to her. I says, you got a creek that's running through your land there? She goes, oh yeah. I says, well, what do you say? There's very strange things that go around right about that creek. And I talked to the psycho. What do you got? He says, there's a portal there. There's an absolute portal there. There's stuff coming in and out of the portal all the time. He says, and it's not good. I says, okay, well, let's take a remote viewer. So we took a remote viewer and says, tell me what you see there. She said, death. People died there. So I thought, well, maybe it's an Indian burial ground. Maybe there's a war there. Couldn't figure out what was going on because there was nothing like that on this particular farmland. It was farmland and stuff. And then she started getting UFO sightings. And we were getting a lot of UFO sightings. We got some pictures. We couldn't quite make it out, but it may possibly have been a gray. We're not sure. The photos just didn't come out as well. As it's one of those old outdoor cameras that you set up, motion detector type of thing, probably the first generation.
Right.
So you can't put a lot of stock into that because you just can't see a clear image of it. But individual people were going there. But here's the thing, what we found out about this place. So we did some research on it, and it used to be a nursing home. And the lady that ran the nursing home, when she wanted to get rid of people, she would take them out in the cold in the winter and let them get hypothermia and die.
Wow.
And then she had this old country doctor that would come up and pronounce them dead of natural causes.
Jesus, man.
And we were flipping out because obviously the spirits were still there, haunting the place. And the people who had nothing to do with them, I mean, this is years and years and years later, they're experiencing all this craziness there because of probably mass murders. So they go, can you imagine? She says, okay, you ran out of money. You're getting kind of old. I'll decide I'll put you out in the winter. And then when you freeze to death, I'll bring you back in, thaw you out. And then I'll call the doctor. Hey, this guy died during the night. Country doctor come up, and say, well, yeah, okay, he's dead. Ship him off. And then where's the next one? So it was an amazing investigation because we were able to get a psychic in there, a remote viewer, and to be able to see that we're getting all kinds of different things. So we kind of realized that, that Utah Skinwalker Ranch is not the only one. There are certain areas throughout the United States that have portals, and they have these weird phenomenons going on in these ranches or farms or areas that we like to call them ranches, Skinwalker ranches. But there's one in Colorado, there's one in Pennsylvania, and now we discovered one in New York.
That's crazy. I wonder if they all share something in common as far as like something going on with magnetically,
portals.
Something like that.
They all have portals.
Well, Chris, let me ask you a question. Do they all exhibit water in some general location around it?
Well, that's a good question,
That's a
Tom,
great
because
question.
This one had water. Now I don't know about the one in Utah, but Katie Grabowski was investigating the one in Colorado, and I believe there's water in that, and she's done an incredible job with that Colorado Skinwalker Ranch up there. I mean, they had voices coming out of nowhere. They had UFOs. They've actually had landings there. They had a deputy sheriff scared right off the land. He was there, and all of a sudden a booming voice comes to this guy while he's investigating something. He jumps in his squad car. I mean, he takes off like a rocket. He says, I'm out of here. This is not for me.
I got to go to see again, Chris, and I was telling Don, Laynee, Thomas, you notice, I'm going to be traveling doing a documentary. These are the locations I got to go to. And there's a strong, like, again, if I don't see anything great, but if I do, you guys have learned how I'm going to be. I'm going to run at it. I got to go. I got to see this, you know?
Well, I can tell you one thing. You better be careful because it's been said, and George Knapp reported this and a few other people, that the one in Skinwalker Ranch, like I said, the most common thing is that there's a portal. So at the Skinwalker Ranch, they hired Navy SEALs, retired Navy SEAls. Now, if you know anything about Navy SEAls, they're not scared of anything. These guys are the toughest of the toughest of the toughest.
Right.
You know, I mean, they go into all kinds of stuff, and these guys are seasoned veterans. Well, apparently they had Navy SEALs as security out there, and these guys packed it in. There was two of them who said, you know what? There's a portal that opened up. We didn't like what came out of it. We're out of here. You can mail us their check. But here's the crazy thing about it, and this is why you got to be careful. Whatever entity came out of that portal followed them home. They started having supernatural and paranormal stuff at their homes.
That's
and it lasts for quite
sure. Attachments are classic. That's
absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we try to avoid all the time.
And you know, Tom, as well as this, with attachments, you got to be very careful. You got to know what you're doing. And I'm sure the ghost investigators will back me up on this. If you don't know what you're doing with some of this stuff, you got to stay away from it.
Agreed. But I'm one of those, and I'm going to learn the hard way. So,
definitely take some sage with you. That should help also.
Yeah.
It's like it's purifying. It cleanses any negativity so you don't bring it home with you or to your next location.
Yeah, for these documents, I'm going to be obviously consulting all of you prior to these locations. And, you know, as I roll up in your towns there, I'm definitely going to make you aware that I'm there. You know what I mean?
Sweet, yes.
Because, look, I just, it's this child in me that's like, I don't care what that is. I'm grabbing it. You know, true story. My ex will probably listen to this and laugh, but I was kicked out of Busch Gardens because the tiger enclosement, they had there's like a chain link fence and then there's a smaller fence between the two. Well, his tail was poking through and I lunged over to grab his tail. In hindsight, yeah, stupid, but that's just how I always was. I got to touch that. I got to know. I got to see it. And again, it's going to be a problem with me moving forward because I don't want to get let down everywhere I go, but I make room for look, I haven't seen anything thus far. And obviously for whatever reason, I'm unfortunate or it's just going to be that I pass on. I'm going to see ghosts in the next life. Like, why didn't I see anything? They're going to tell me like, you're an asshole. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
No, I promise you this is that if you make your way out to Chicago with us, is that we'll, there's places around here that we know are some of them are overhyped, but I would almost rest assured that you'd see some interaction with our equipment. So and hopefully you get touched. Hopefully somebody bangs you on the head.
I'm ready. Believe me.
There you go,
Thomas. So Thomas, as you heard his story, his encounter was and I say there's a lot of parallels between the paranormal and ufology. A lot of parallels I've learned. Thomas, in your interaction, are you still having I would say experiences?
Yeah, I'm still having some, not as many as I used to, but they kind of pop up out of nowhere when it happens. Some of the experiences I have are related back to like the UFO investigations. Other ones, though, is just with contact with people. One of the weird ones I had a while back is you always wonder that, if you've had contact, and it's one of those things in my mind that, you always go back and forth. Did it happen? Did it not happen? Did it happen? And right when you think, well, maybe I'm just reading too much into it, something pops up again. And there's one of those situations where another MUFON person, coincidentally out of New York, where you're at, Chris, contacted me. And we were going over some stories that I was writing at the time. And she goes, a friend of mine, she's had abduction experiences. And she was telling me the other day about she was taken and she was on board some sort of a craft, this huge craft. And it wasn't just one person. There was a lot of people there. And we're talking about it, and all of a sudden she starts describing a person that sounded a lot like you. I said, really? She goes, yeah. She talked about the person's background. The person taught martial arts for years, which I did. They were tall. And she says, the way she described the person, it sounded a lot like you. So she goes, as a test, what I did is I got pictures up, a bunch of random pictures, and she created like a lineup out of the random pictures. And mine was one of them. She laid them all on a table in no set order. And her friend reached and grabbed my picture out and says, this is the guy that I was talking to.
Huh.
And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, this is the guy I was talking to. And it's like, wait a minute. If you're pulling my leg, you're doing a great job right now, you know? But things like that pop up out of nowhere.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I got to tell you, Thomas, I'm going to do this for you, okay? If you are not narrating or doing audiobooks, you should be. You know what I mean? Like, I could literally listen to you all night. I mean, do you guys agree?
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like he's got this voice. It doesn't even matter what subject it is. You're like, fuck, I'm going to listen to this. It's really good. So
it's those pregnant pauses, Thomas.
Yeah. Well, it's that building a suspenseful moment.
Yeah, you should definitely.
That's right. See, you see how his personality changed?
That's right. Yeah, you had to speak my head spin around at the same time. You know,
that's right.
You know, the first time I spoke with Thomas after, I was like, holy, this guy should be narrating full documentaries. You know, like he's got that, you know, like just like Don. Don's got a radio personality, radio voice. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, he's got a sexy voice.
Yeah, he's definitely got to get out there and do some radio, which I'll talk to you guys about that later. Here's my scary experience, right? And it's not probably as scary as most would think, but it was good enough for me to ponder. Since I started doing this podcast and the website's up, and you know, obviously I'm getting a lot of people emailing with their information, etc. I had one guy send me basically a novel, and I'll put it in summary because it's long. In summary, my theory that I had on gray aliens and what they're doing here was really spot on, right? About that. And so if, you know, you guys don't know what I think, I think they're, you know, advanced robots with some sort of biology, you know, as an exoskin with the consciousness uploaded. And we're here under long-term study, in short. This person who emailed me said that my theory on the gray aliens is spot on and done really well, and I should utilize caution because the reptilian such and such nation is going to take notice of this, and they're going to more than likely I'm going to end up missing. So
don't go for any hikes in Wyoming.
Right? Yeah. So yeah. When I read that, I was like, what? But then. So I typed this in, and it's just not reptilians. It was something reptoid, something that along those lines. So I start looking into this, and like you read these stories, and I can't think of the guy's name now, and I lost it. He was really famous in the 90s. He was a whistleblower, and there was like a battle underground, gray aliens versus military.
Phil Snyder.
Phil Snyder, there it is. Yeah, and he allegedly committed suicide, and they found him, I guess, in a way where he was strangulated and it couldn't be suicide.
Yeah, you better put a big thing on that, alleged.
Yeah, I'm going to read more about him. I haven't, because unfortunately, everything I find on him video-wise is grainy, poor production. I can't really gauge the person himself. I don't see any real interviews. But then that word popped up. Something with the reptoids and the reptilians and the men in black are basically that. In short, when I read this email, creeped me out. Like to hear anyone out there be like, hey man, your theory is really spot on. They're going to get you.
Well, you know, you probably are not really far off, Adam, because I'll tell you some of the information that I got is that the grays, when they actually had the gray that was living, they had to bring in botanists because they realized that this was organically grown, and their way that they take in nourishment and excel waste products and everything is more plant life than anything else from what I was told. and that these grays are not, from each other, that they're kind of, grown in to do like worker bee type of stuff. So I don't think you're far off.
Yeah, I say this because as a kid, and this is a childhood mind, right? When I first thought about aliens, and it was Communion by Whitley Strieber, which scared my mom and I. My mom bought the movie Communion. You remember that movie Communion?
Right.
Yeah. So I was watching on my mom on the couch. It was dark, and the dog jumped on the couch, scared the shit out of my mom and I. You know what I mean? So as a kid, I remember looking at that image he had on his book, and I was like, that doesn't look like it's a thing, like something that breathes. It looks like, if I had to guess, it was like a mask. And then the movie Fire in the Sky comes along, and he's describing, Travis Walton basically said in a nutshell, like, suits or whatever. Well, in that movie anyway, that's actually not his opinion, it turns out. That was just, Hollywood production. But I remember I took that idea, I adopted that idea. But, your thoughts evolve as you start using logic. And for me, I read somewhere to cross just our Milky Way galaxy is like 10,000 generations or something like that, right? So it made more sense to me for it to be an advanced life robot. And yeah, we were saying about the botanist makes sense, because if you're going to use an exoskin, obviously it's going to have to be biological and something that's more resilient than ours. Because our skin, if you look at Terminator, and I hate to say it, but without a pumping heart, that exterior of that Terminator didn't make sense. But yeah, plant life makes plenty of sense. All it needs is sunlight, right? And water. So you can definitely put it over a machine.
What technology they use to grow it.
Yeah. I mean, who's this? Like, look, I say this a lot. It's my theory, or it's my belief, but today's science is yesterday's theory. And yesterday's theory was the imagination of a child and his curiosity. That's just how it works. That's how science comes to be. You have to imagine, theorize, and then work hard to make it a science. And then, like all other science, it's going to be disproven eventually. That's just the nature of it. So, yeah. And I talked to Don and Laynee a lot about the spirits in our last, for me, the energy of the human body, the electricity we put off, makes more sense for those spirits to be pure energy, which is why they affect the temperatures of the room, why you get the readings on some of your instruments, it makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It, and that's what we use to corroborate all the time, is that there are hundreds and hundreds of hours of video that I have that you only get to see a small snippet of, because of the fact that a lot of times, first off, it's boring. Right. Because you wait for an inordinate amount of time to actually capture something. But when you do get interaction, it generally does not continue on. It's usually a hit it and quit it kind of an interaction. And we always try to post things that have corroborating interaction with our equipment. And whether that be electromagnetic, static, or with EVPs and spirit boxes, you just can't make that stuff up. And that was one of the things that we told you before, was that's kind of what started us down this path. We wanted to see if this equipment actually worked in the field, and lo and behold, we've stuck with it since. So you're absolutely right. That's really what energy is, right? Energy never dissipates; it continues on. Yeah, and we are energy, right? We're like a living battery.
And I say this a lot too. This planet of ours, our home here, is billions of years old, and we don't know what lived here prior, whether it be humanoid, animal, or otherwise, and we don't know how good or evil they were or weren't. And their energy, just like ours, sticks around. So we don't know what's out there. We have no clue. It's interesting, and that's what makes it sexy, right? It's an interesting subject.
Well, compared to the whole universe, which is over 14 billion years old, right. I think we're only just over 3 billion. So, I mean, we're kind of youngsters into the whole thing here. I mean, if you think about some of the life forms that they said that have visited us, they're 45 to 50,000 years more advanced to us. I mean, they're looking at us like an ant farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like probably why they haven't really come down and said, hey, we're here kind of yet, because they're still working to see what we're really all about. I mean, think about this. If you're 50,000 years more advanced, it's like me, a scientist talking quantum physics to a grasshopper. It just, their technology, we just wouldn't understand as well.
More or less my belief system in that. And so I haven't shared this with Don and Laynee yet. I know I shared it with Thomas and yourself. If all of us were walking together in Central Park, huge park, and we saw an ant mound, and there was ants, they were driving cars and they're flying planes or using Bluetooth, watching their tablets, then they're throwing bombs at each other. We're closing that park down, and we're observing that ant pile forever, as long as it takes to see how they evolve. And if we bring things to scale, where let's say they're throwing nukes at each other, we're not really going to intervene, because to scale, it's not going to affect our planet the way we live. I think we would intervene when they got to the technology where it was going to affect everything, like say the whole planet. But in that scenario, they're only affecting 4 or 5 feet of the park, to scale anyhow. So we would observe that as long as possible, and we'd want to do it without them being privy to it, which is what I believe we're under right now. We're definitely being observed, no doubt.
I agree.
So it's, especially in the realm of, here's the thing with the parallels of paranormal and the UFOs. Now do this math. You have this really advanced life form. It's here watching the life forms here. What the hell are these people doing? They're shooting each other, and God knows we're definitely entertaining. There is no question. There's, at best, if it's not scientific, we're definitely one of their best channels, without a doubt. But that aside,
well, if I was flying by this planet, I certainly lock the doors to the craft before I, drove by.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're over your watch, like, holy shit, these people are shooting each other, having wars. They start seeing rap music, rock music. It's endless, the nonsense we do, right? So it's every kind of channel is on this planet for them to watch. Violence, love. I'm not even going to begin to explain here in Florida. That's a channel by itself. You know what I mean? So. So the point I'm making is there's nothing short. We're always going to provide something for them to observe. Always. We don't evolve. You know what I mean? As a species, that's really disheartening to say that we still even have racism currently. That's insane. How does that still exist? Our technology is leapfrogging past us as far as evolution, and we're still stuck somewhere in the 80s. We haven't really budged from that spot. And that's the scariest part of our existence. And so then you think about this. And I don't know, have you guys ever watched anything with Graham Hancock or anything like that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. That guy, he's changed my mind on a lot of things. So for the paranormal and UFOs likewise, again, 3 to 4 billion year old planet, it millions of years ago, another civilization could have been here, whatever it may be, and it perished. If our civilization just fell off Earth one day, in 4 or 5 million years, there'd be no trace of us. Nothing other than, not even satellites. I'm sorry. They would eventually crash Earth and disintegrate. So there'd be no trace. So we don't know what energy is already here prior to us, right? Graham Hancock has also made it very clear, and I have to believe the guy, because it's perfect. How many ice ages have come? How many civilizations with really intelligent have come and gone? We don't know. So for Don and Laynee, you're out there investigating. Some of the energy you're coming across might be ancient. Oh, it
absolutely could be.
Yeah,
sure could.
Thomas's experiences with whatever he's experiencing could be ancient, or may such be. Because if you think of this too, and not to beat this or play this record again, but look back at the ancient Greeks and all the technology and all the ideas and the wonderful inventions they had. And here comes Rome with Catholicism and puts the brakes on that. And so we're basically 2,000 years behind the ball on technology. So had Rome not done what they'd done, who knows where we'd be right now in the realm of technology and what we might have discovered. So I make room for a lot of these ideas. And another thing too, I appreciate about Don and Laynee's channel, exactly as you said, there's no nonsense. He gets right to the good stuff, right? There's no build-up. There's all right, guys, did you see that orb? And then commercial break, and then we wait a little bit, and then we wait 30 minutes to see something that may or may not excite us. Don and Laynee get right to it.
And then you find out it's dust or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's just hard.
It's the dust attacking us.
Next, you know, you're calling the maiden. That's the real Ghostbusters, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know. Chris, what do you think so far? What do you think moving forward? What do we discover?
What do we discover? I think we're going to have disclosure, not right away, but I think I just read an article where NASA is now contemplating writing a program or something that when disclosure comes, they'll be able to put it out to the general public. And they're debating, how do we do this? How do we put this out there where people aren't running over to their neighbor's house, throwing rocks through the windows, screaming that I always knew you were an alien? Because that's exactly what's going to happen, is that if the president came out on the White House lawn tomorrow and said, you know, aliens have been here and they've been here for a long time and they're walking among us, how many people are going to go, oh my God, that's what's wrong with my neighbor. That's what's wrong with the guy down the street. He's an alien. And, you know, it will create, because as you said, we haven't evolved to the point where we can take in all these different things yet. We're just not at that mindset. So I think, as Lou Alessandro said, that you got to give disclosure in a drip. You have to do it a little bit at a time. You got to digest this part and then digest it. But it's coming, because now government officials, not just officials, but entities like the U.S. Navy, the Pentagon, have said they're real. We're not going to say they're alien, but there's something flying out there that is we don't understand it. We don't know what it is. The dynamics are something that we can't explain, the power system. And I think it has to do a lot with consciousness. I think our consciousness of all these phenomena, like ghosts and everything, and I really truly believe that spirits and UFOs and everything is all one big consciousness. They're all connected in some way. We haven't put the puzzle together, but it's there. And now this is the idea, is that people like yourselves and ghost hunters and ufologists and everything, they all are trying to put the pieces together, and they're expanding out. I love that. They're not just saying, I'm just a UFO guy. I don't believe in ghosts or anything. They're saying, no, we got to look at the whole paranormal spectrum as a whole.
Yep. You know what, Chris? Stephen Murrah is coming back on the show. He's already on. He's a paranormal specialist. And he did he said that, and I agree with him. He says there's too many walls up. There's too many lines. We're compartmentalizing these subjects, and they should be shared as a whole, as you said. Otherwise, we're not going to understand the whole thing, right? You can't figure anything out without looking at every aspect. And the biggest thing for me, so here's my imagination. Ghosts are energy. If they're demons, they're energy, right? These are energy sources. We know that you could trap energy using certain devices. It's how Bluetooth works, right? A beam is sent, we catch it, we pull it out of the air. We have ways to intelligently capture energy to benefit us, technical. And this is a childhood in me. I want, I'm not saying we're going to have a photon pack, right? I'm not saying this, but it'd be nice. But there's got to be some way we could have something that captures the energy, right? Some sort of technology. Now, here is where I see a parallel.
Identify the energy.
Right. Here's the parallel that I think, anyway. There's a theory. By just me saying it in my head one night, I was like, wait a minute. Here we have now these entities that are highly advanced from someplace. They're observing us. As they're observing us, are they seeing these other anomalies? And then they start beginning to try to capture and learn and study them themselves. Highly, in my opinion, explains Skinwalker Ranch, right? They're there using their technology, trying to capture these things and causing absolute conundrums going on there, right? Just chaos in these locations. And something Don said earlier about the water source. It makes sense, because to be the best conductor you could have is fluid, yeah? So there's
absolutely
there's a lot of connection there, right? And I have to believe the parallel there is these entities that are watching us or observing us, alien or otherwise, as observing us, saw these ghosts, and they have something that captures energy the way I imagine in my mind, whatever that may be. I'm not a scientist, but that's what they're doing, and that's why you're seeing these enormous anomalies in these locations. That's the only conclusion I can come to. That's to explain Skinwalker Ranch the very best I can is when you have a higher technology. Because if you think about a billionaire owned that spot, set up all these cameras, and like nothing worked out for this guy on camera. It's because a higher intelligence has figured that out. And as they're trying to study, they're screwing up our ability to do it so they can continue to do it on their own. Right. So,
yeah, and that shouldn't be that hard to absolutely interfere with it.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be. And just to your point, Adam, is that one of the things that we've come to find out, and it's kind of known in the paranormal ghost hunter realm community, is that not only is water a conductor, right, but they believe, and I don't think with evidence at this point, but the belief is that a lot more manifestations happen in buildings or areas that contain water in a close proximity and limestone.
Yeah.
And so limestone, they believe, is a capturing mineral for energy. It captures and holds the energy. And that's why, for lack of a better term, it traps it.
Right.
And it traps it in that environment. And then it's fortunate because then Laynee and I go and we walk around basements with limestone, and Laynee goes by herself, and then we capture it.
Of course, Laynee goes by herself.
And it's very exciting. It really is. And then it's trying to get the evidence out to the public. It's basically educating the public on all of our paranormal findings.
I got to say, it all makes sense. And it for me, again, I have no science in my background. This is all childhood imagination, theory, and a lot of downtime to think about it. And it does make sense, especially when you learn about, an example would be like every case I've ever heard about alien abduction. There are so many parallels between alien abduction and possession. It sounds, if you remove that word, the title, and you remove the subject matter there attached to it, whether it be ghost or alien, and you just read the material, it's the same thing almost, you know? What was the term that Joseph Jordan used? It was walk-ins, where something would just take possession of your body. And it wasn't, there's no description saying that it was an alien or a ghost or demon or otherwise. It's just a walk-in. And they have, if you just, again, read the material, the parallel's amazing. It sounds identical in every single way. So moving forward for me, I make room for a lot. You know, Thomas, what do you think moving forward?
You know, I make room for a lot of stuff too. One of the conversations I had, oh man, it goes back 10 plus years ago now, something like that, maybe 10, 12 years ago, was with a gentleman named Ted Phillips. He was a longtime UFO investigator, also looked at the paranormal. And back then, he told me there's like a dozen places around the United States that were similar to Skinwalker Ranch. And this goes back like at least 12 years ago. He was working on one down in Missouri. And something he mentioned to me, he says, I was doing the investigation and I'm seeing these orbs inside of a building. These orbs are going around inside of the building. And I thought, wait a minute. If I'm inside of a building, they're paranormal. If I'm outside the building, somebody calls them a UFO. He says, what if there's no difference between the two? They're connected. And you think about a comment like that and you're like, you know, maybe he's right. Where's that crossover? Maybe they're somehow connected, like you said.
Yeah, listen, if we're being observed by them, and not to, play a broken record, but if they're observing us watching and they stumble on, and again, better technology could see better things than we can, and they happen to see like Laynee walking around the dark and there's an entity there that shouldn't be there, it's got their attention and they're going to want to study it the same. And what better place to pick are these large ranches where it's not overly populated for them to make it their own test ground. So that's probably why you're seeing this all across the United States in these very vacant plots of land. It's a great petri dish, right?
Right. And I'm kind of like you. I'd throw my hat in the ring to go out to Skinwalker Ranch. I'll go out to any section they've got out there, just give me a call and I'll go out on my own dime,
Yeah, Thomas, believe me, I'm going to be calling on you and some of you other guys as I'm out there doing this stuff.
I want to go, because I'm just really curious. Because I'd like to do the investigations from my point of view, and maybe I've got some ideas out of the box that they haven't thought about.
So let's collaborate. We'll do.
Let's.
I'd say by summertime, I'm ready to go do this. Right?
Oh, I'm ready now because wintertime's coming up. So hey,
and the opportunity you get to go out there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, come on! I've been cooped up for almost a year and a half, 2 years.
Right. That's the truth. I don't know if I could do snow. That's what my plan to tour the United States would be: start in the summer and go from the northeast across to the west, and then down through the south in the wintertime back across. You know what I mean? That's in my mind now. I'm a Florida guy, right? I see snow and it's like, oh, great.
I'm from Ohio. In '78 we had a blizzard that was so bad. You had to use snowmobiles to take food back into people. So I'm familiar with that stuff.
Can't do it, man. My hat's off to you.
But I'm just also the point too that, hey, if I can't get out, give me a bottle of vodka or something like that. I'll be okay,
Yeah. Last Christmas I was walking around the beach. So
I wish.
Florida, we get winter. It depends. It's really temperamental, right? We're going to get it for maybe a month this year, 6 weeks best at its coldest point. And then, between November and December, it's cold to hot. It's cold to hot. It's cold to hot. This is the most bipolar weather system I've ever encountered, but I'm acclimated.
Well, it's going to be interesting for me because I just moved to Buffalo, New York, and
the snow capital of the United States.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do, I just moved into the house, is I'm going to Lowe's or Home Depot or someplace and see what kind of snowblower I can get, because everybody says you need a snowblower, a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and a snowblower. Great.
Yeah.
Is that you guys start getting snow in Buffalo usually like in November.
Oh yeah.
We don't even get nailed in Chicago until usually middle of December into January, but then we get that lovely stuff off the lake all the time. So it could not be snowing anywhere except here. There's like no system. It just comes off the lake.
Yeah, we're right close to where I live. Right,
that's
Lake
right.
Erie, and so we're going to get the snow effect there.
Yeah, the only problem in Florida is we have what I call the daily hurricane, right? So it'll just rain here for zero reason. Crazy winds too, out of nowhere, and then it'll be sunny. It's a crazy place. It's beautiful here, but it's crazy. Chris, where you live in Buffalo, you got a house, right?
Yeah, I just moved into a nice house in a nice neighborhood.
There's a lot of reports of stuff in the skies out there, man.
Very much. We just got a report right where I live. We looked on it, and sure enough, right in the same neighborhood that I live, somebody reported a UFO sighting. So we're investigating it now. We're getting tons of reports in New York. It's getting crazy here. Hudson Valley I'm telling you, they're going to have to put traffic lights in the sky because these UFOs are going to crash into each other. I mean, it's just unbelievable sightings in the Hudson Valley area, right by the Hudson River. We've for years and years, but now there seems to be an uptick in the sightings in that area again, and strange phenomenons and stuff. And I call that area the Area 51 of the East Coast because all kinds of military things have happened there, scientific things, right under people's noses.
That's another stop for certain.
Oh, if you really want to see things about paranormal or UFOs, the Hudson Valley has got to be one of the top 4 in the United
you were
States.
telling me that. Mike Penicello from the MUFON, Connecticut, I'll have to share the link with you. It's these sky cameras. I already got one. Right when he sent it, I was like, I'm done doing it. Because I don't spend a lot of time looking up. It's a shame for me to say that because I'm desperate to see something, but I get so preoccupied on a walk, I don't even bother. It's stupidity on my behalf, shame on me. But these cameras, you just put them on your roof, right? Or some fixture, and you can hook it up to your computer, and it just monitors day and night. How genius. They're expensive, no joke, but worth it if that's what you're looking for. And from what I'm reading about them, Don and Laynee could use it too because some of them have IR, and some of them, if you pay the money, they have what do you call that? FLIR, like little FLIR cameras.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, that's for me no brainer. You know what I mean? Like once I get on the road doing this doc, I'm gonna have those stringed up all over the van because that's a primary idea. And shout out to Mike Penicello for that idea, man.
Well, like Tom was saying, he was saying about not knowing sometimes the difference between the UFO and the paranormal. There was one time I was laying in bed and I was up, I was alert, and I saw like about 7 different lasers straight in front of me. Now, no equipment I had because I was about to go to bed, so I'm laying there and I see these lasers just going around in circles with my own eyes. And I just like kind of froze, which I'm really mad at myself for doing, that I just didn't get up and grab equipment. But I froze and I'm like, what do you want? What can I do for you?
Yeah, lady,
so, I mean, was it paranormal or was it a UFO? What was it?
You got to
make such the wrong timing.
You can't be mad at yourself. Again, I say this to some of these off-air cases I discuss. Again, I have to make room for this is advanced technology, and you don't know if it's altering your state of mind and being and what you feel or think. You don't know that, right? I hear so many people tell me that they go into, it's a really weird combination, right? The majority say the same thing as most. They get like paralysis. They can't move. Then I hear another group of people where they go into a state of euphoria and comfort. It's not that they can't move. They just don't care. And then there's the other group of people where they're into this state of confusion where their body and their brain isn't synced right. And they're just not reacting the way they want to. And then here's the other thing too. And I say this a lot. You're talking about advanced technology. They can make you perceive things. You understand what brainwaves are and how they can be manipulated by, like if you get an MRI, your DNA is not the same as it was prior to the MRI. I've learned that, some years ago. And that's just as, imaging to find an anomaly. Now imagine what we could do with controls, right? Things that you can control with technology that we can. Like I reference this show a lot, Future Weapons from back in 2008. Sound wave machines that could render someone unconscious and percussion machines that could literally blow your lungs up. And, that's our technology. Obviously for everything we have is geared for war. I get why, but it's kind of stupid, but imagine what
Adam, in Hudson Valley area back in the 1930s, Alfred Loomis had one of the most secret labs there were called the Tower Building in the Hudson Valley area. And what did they work on? Exactly what you were saying. Human brainwaves. They were experimenting and working on it back in the 1930s. You could check out the name Alfred Loomis. He was a billionaire and a brilliant physicist. And he created a lab called the Tower Building right there. And that's one of the things they were really, really working on were how to manipulate, how to work, how to understand brainwaves.
Right. Look, that's, to me, the computer we call brain, very powerful tool. We don't even use it at its full capacity, right? Now, try to imagine like someone like that guy you're talking about advanced 50,000 years and what he can do to your brain when he feels like it. Look, people like Laynee are like she's rare. She'll do, again, Laynee walks. I have to check my 360 everywhere I go, make sure I'm good, right? Laynee just walks in there, right? No fear in her. So for her, if they were going to make an approach, of course, I'd be like, well, this one here will just walk up. She doesn't care. What do we do to put her in a state where we could alter that? You know what I mean? So consider that for in the future. Anytime you feel something abnormal in those paranormal scenarios.
And I will say this is that if and Chris and Thomas, you probably haven't seen pictures of us or anything, but if I was an alien, I would definitely come and visit Laynee.
Yeah. Laynee's a fox, man. She is, no question.
Thank you.
So Thomas, for you especially, your story intrigues me because it seems like you were. It has some parallel or some similarities to even Travis Walton's story. Like it feels like selection, and which is again a good thing for you to be an investigator for what you do because you have. And I say this a lot: if you're an investigator, I'm not saying everyone have experience, but it makes it easier for the person you're interviewing because they feel comfortable. They're not being. There's no doubt cast upon them. They're not being looked upon as like an idiot. You're relatable. And that makes it easier for them to open up to you. I think that's an important factor. What do you think, Tom? Oh, Thomas, what? His mic's down.
Oh,
yeah. So anyway,
hey,
yeah, but
Adam, I just want to add what you were saying about brainwaves and stuff.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Project Pandora?
The
CIA's Project Pandora used microwaves to send signals to the human brain that showed how they can affect emotional and pathological states. So think about that. They were doing that years ago. How much have they advanced through Project Pandora now?
Forget it. I mean, try to imagine this. The F-822 Raptor was a black project in the late 80s, 90s, and the F-117 and B-2 bomber were black projects in the 50s and 60s. You can only imagine what we have in black project right now. Yes, Chris, that's a big deal, actually. I'm reading that right now. The CIA Pandora project, that's a big deal. There's countless information about that. I'll have to read about it.
And that was done years ago, where they were actually trying to develop weapons to be able to use microwaves for that. And who's to say they haven't done it and how they haven't experimented? I mean, look what they did with MK Ultra. Think about what they're doing with Project Pandora.
Yeah, well, I mean, imagine this, man. Einstein made, everything Einstein did nuclear-wise was, in his mind, was not geared to be a weapon. It was not geared for that. Even the guy that worked on the Manhattan Project, from what I read, was heartbroken when he discovered what it was going to do. These things were geared for, sustainable energy for X amount of time. And, of course we're going to make it a weapon if we see its potential to, be one up on our adversaries. I don't disagree because, look, we're a powerful country, but we're not the evil one, or we're not the most evil, I should say. So there's other countries that would use that power. If we didn't have it, it would easily be used against us. Not even a second thought. So,
well, and IE, just like in Cuba, right? I mean, you're hearing reports come out of the news on a consistent basis about embassy staff, having brain problems. I don't necessarily think that it's aneurysms or anything, but and they're still not sure if it's sound waves, if it's a microwave signal that's directed. But these people are absolutely ill, and it's more than 200 people was the last report that I read. Not just in Cuba, but in Eastern Europe as well. So somebody's using it. Yeah, and maybe we're doing like we did in the 50s, right? Where we tested. Yeah, I shouldn't laugh about that, but where we tested, anthrax and and even back in I think it was around the turn of the century. I could be wrong about that, but where they tested syphilis and gave it to troops.
Yeah.
So. Is that, but it doesn't, and you see these reports coming out, little by little. I don't follow them verbatim, but you can't even help but not hear about this, though.
Yeah, it's I did read some stuff about that, and I don't know what conclusion to draw on that. It's bizarre because it's not like it's isolated. You're right. It's pretty spread out, and when something's spread out, you have to believe it's with intention.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, if it happened just in one part of Cuba, it could be, an isolated thing. But there's no doubt. It's happening. And I'm one of those, I wait to hear more than, what I could, to learn more anyway. But you're right. It's definitely happening a little more spread out. I'm going to look more into that. I'm definitely going to look more into that because that's got my attention. Don, moving forward, before we close, what would you like to see to come out in the paranormal world as far as technology to help you in your investigations? If you had to use your imagination, say, I would like this. I
would like to see a proton pack.
Me too.
No, I'm sorry.
Me too.
Is that no? And then burn each other's face off while we're trying to capture a ghost. No, but what I would like to see is some kind of an exciter, some kind of an electronic ion exciter, right? That if you're in an environment and we get some kind of an interaction on our equipment, that you could turn this exciter on, and this exciter would help manifest whatever is touching and interacting with devices, more so than just the Connect 360 and, something that you really couldn't debunk, right? And something that you could tangibly turn that energy into what it really is.
Right, like a material. So if I had to use my imagination, let's say you have the Connect, it finds an outline of something, and then you attach some sort of matter to it, whether it be liquid matter or smoke or a dust. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a great idea. I wonder how that would. There's got to be something out there. Some guy out there is going to hear, like, you know what, I got this. I found a market for it. I'm going to make it. Because that's really, if it comes down to, if there's a market for it, someone's going to invent it. That's going to happen.
Because then you could see manifestations, right? You could see what's interacting with you, and whether it's, a ball that would be considered an orb, or whether it's a full manifestation of a body, similar to what the paperboy is at the mausoleum.
Or if it's residual, it'll just go ahead and play what was going on at that time. So we know that's residual.
I think to make it physical, if I'm thinking about it now, you would have to know where it is and focus a lot of energy on it, and then use chemicals to illuminate it.
Well, one thing I had in mind is if you had some sort of the laser pointers to put out X number of lights.
Right.
If you could shine those out and put some sort of a cloud mist, they could pick up those points, and then you could transfer those points into a 3D image.
Like modeling software. Yeah,
exactly. Because I do a lot of 3D designing, 3D engineering, and 3D printing. And if you could translate it into a 3D image that, maybe you wouldn't have a great shape, but then you start advancing with your changes in technology. You get a beginning point. If you can pick it up, you can prove it. Okay, this works. So now let's improve the technology.
Well, Thomas, one of the things that they do all the time is, and we have it too, right, is that on investigations, although it's cumbersome, and that's really, where it becomes problematic, right? But you can use a hazer machine, and you can, which is really just a fog machine for you guys. It creates more of a haze in the atmosphere, in the air, in the surrounding environment than it does big billows of fog and smoke. So that you can, and you set up a laser grid. And, to your point, Thomas, is that if you could take that one step further, and whether it be introducing more electronic ions into it, and to allow it to surround it, so you could look at it, capture it, and then surround it in the haze. And I mean, we've tried experiments with it, with the laser grid, and the only thing that you ever really get with it is some disruption from time to time, if you're lucky enough to see it. And it's very difficult for it to transfer. Whether you have a regular video camera going, you just see a little movement of the laser grid, like a little disruption of the laser grid. But that's an interesting point, though.
Yeah, if you could take. One of the things that they've got is technology. You can use actually cell phones and do photometry with it. So you could take a series of images around that haze, and you say where it's being disrupted at. There is software which can reassemble that into a 3D image based on where the grid's picking up at.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
it's just something off the wall.
What about here's another idea too. And I was kind of imagining it now. Think about what neons are, why they light up. You know what I mean? If you could, because these are energy-based entities, in theory. If you had a large clear cube that was filled with the gases that you would have in, say, neon lighting, and then you could pass light through it, and if they were there, if they passed through that, maybe I definitely want to come with an idea for this, because I would be on board for that. I would literally lobby on your behalf. I would harass people of wealth to make that happen. You know what I mean? Because that's what I am. I want answers. I want them now. There's a market, because even if some guy spent some money making blah 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 tool and it costs $4,000, but he's saying it's got a good, there's a strong chance it's going to get an entity. The people are going to buy it. Everyone's going to buy it. It's going to happen. The TV stations are going to buy it. All the investigators buy it. I would push hard for it, So something. I like that idea though about the haze and then the grids, but something. It's energy, and energy if it's in fluid, right? And you add light to it, it would have to give it almost a physical prowess.
You would think so. I mean, that's really what the premise is behind it. So, and the closest thing, like I said, that we have currently really is that 3D Connect. And we've told you on other shows that we can debunk, a lot of things with that 3D Connect.
Right.
For some reason, it loves broomsticks. It thinks broomsticks are people. Don't know why but it loves that. And, but we know it, and it loves lamps. It'll map lamps, even if they don't have to be on, just table lamps. I don't know if it's the reflective capability of maybe the base of the lamp,
right?
Or that it reflects back and it thinks it needs to map it. It's usually a jumbled mess over the top of a lamp,
right?
But in the other instances that we use it is when you're out in the middle of a cemetery and all of a sudden an image appears on the ground and it's not a fluffy bunny. Pretty much that you have nothing that those little laser dots are bouncing off of and manipulating, right, and returning that thing back to you. Is that so? So we really believe it, and it happens to be Laynee's favorite thing.
Yeah,
like the image. Yeah, you were saying about the one image in the graveyard. When that image jumped up, it actually jumped back down into the grass.
Yeah, that was at Spring Lake.
Yes.
Yeah.
I imagine if they had more like facial recognition software or instruments readily available, that would be a go-to, right?
Oh, sure.
Because
sure.
I did read a report. If I did tell you guys about it, in fact, I think I did. One of the off-air podcasts, a guy worked for a building I won't name. It's federal, won't name where, but one of the machines kept picking up something on the facial recognition on its, I believe he said its southeast location, and they replaced the machine and it still picked it up for the span of a month or something like that, and then it stopped. But ultimately it was picking up. It wasn't just the one machine, it was replaced. So yeah, like that would, I don't know, something. I would wish something that we come with something soon, because I'm desperate.
Ultimately, I would just like to go on Jimmy Fallon, with an entity next to Laynee and I.
Yeah.
And ask some questions, right? I mean, that would blow the whole thing all up, right?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes.
Bring them home, have some dinner.
That's the problem. I'm a weirdo. I'll walk right up to him and be like, look, let's just talk about this, okay? All right, guys, before we close, anyone want to add? Oh, good.
Oh, wow, that's dead silence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, Thomas, Don, Laynee, I had a great night tonight. I had a lot of great talk, good conversations, and I look forward to doing it again.
Well, thank you for having me on.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. As always, Adam.
Happy Halloween, guys. I enjoyed your company. We'll talk again soon.
Happy Halloween.
Bye, Adam. Bye.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Yeah.